Hello and welcome to this video. My name's Beckham. I think this raw image can teach us quite a lot about our photography and also about human nature. The author here has been overwhelmed by the technical side of their photography, and that's caused them to miss something very important. Now, the reason I can be confident enough to say they were overwhelmed is because I do know this person well, and what they've missed is something they already know. The human nature part is that all of us only have a limited amount of RAM in our head. And if we're using a large proportion of that RAM to cope with the technicalities of our photography, quite often there's not enough left to fuel the creative side. Something has to give, and here it's the composition. Let's take a look at what this simple omission has cost the author. The focus on the head and the eye is just about perfect. But the strongest part of the image, which is the head and the eye, is almost central in the frame. The author forgot to recompose the shot after they focused, and that's not good. A high price has been paid for that simple error. The author has lost the tail of the animal, and while it's way out of focus, it could have been included in the shot, and it would have played an important role in the composition. The animal's back foot and also the front foot have been cut off, and the correct composition would have included them both. So to get an acceptable image here, we would have to crop severely, even changing the format of the picture. The crop would throw away quite a lot of pixels, which the author paid a fair amount of money to capture. In addition, any image editing we do is going to be from a defensive point of view. We're going to be trying to play catch-up rather than being out in front at the editing stage. This also makes image editing a little more difficult and a little more lengthy too. So for a small error, the author has paid a significant price. At best, losing a lot of the impact and appeal of the image. At worst, losing the image completely because we delete it. This is how we should have composed this picture, and back button focus may have helped us here. If you've not considered back button focus before, take a look at my video which I've linked below. This isn't some fringe technique added to a video just to pad out the length. It's a technique worthy of your attention. By composing the shot as we can see here, there's a couple of things we can say for certainty. First of all, we place the head in a very strong position within the frame. We would have certainly retained the claws of the left front foot of the animal, and we would have included the back foot with a bit of room to spare. There's a very good chance we would have included the entire tail, although I cannot say that for absolute certain, but certainly enough of it until it went fully out of focus, and then it wasn't significant at all. But my guess is we could have included the entire animal. Now, with the image opened up into Photoshop and with the crop shape, the rule of thirds lying over the top, sometimes it's not a bad idea to touch the O key on your keyboard, not the 0 key, the O key, and we can scroll through the other compositional rules. We'll skip the next one, which is just a grid, so I'm touching the O key once and again. This one is called diagonal, and although it's not perfect for this shot, it's certainly lending itself towards being quite a good composition given the shapes and directions of the elements of the picture. Touching again, we go on to the triangle composition, and here we can see it's pretty strong here too. But if we go even further, we find the golden ratio, but that doesn't fit too well, but it's not far off. But another one that fits quite well is the golden spiral. You can see the shape as it comes down the tail, whirls around and ends strongly on the animal's face. Touch the O key once more and we're back to the rule of thirds. Now coming back to the original capture in Adobe Camera Raw, let's think through what the author was doing here at the time they captured this shot. They're using a long telephoto lens set at 400mm, focusing close on a very small animal. Therefore, depth of field is going to be very minimal and focus very critical. The light will not allow a smaller aperture, and we don't want to increase the ISO. We've already got that set at 400. The lens is heavy, and it doesn't take too long while we're waiting for the animal to get into a good position before a little fatigue sets in. But we have to maintain focus on the eye and hold that shutter button halfway down. This is where back button focus may help. So holding that long lens for any length of time does mean a little fatigue is likely to creep in. We're going to lose focus constantly on the eye and face of the animal, and we're going to have to constantly re-establish that. What the author did here was to re-establish that focus and took the shot. But the focal point was very likely right in the center of their viewfinder, and that's where the animal's head and eye appear, more or less in the same position. So what are the options or solutions when we're in a situation like this? Well, one of the things we can do is to change the focus point. Assuming that the focus point is set to the center of the screen, what I think happened here was that the red square was placed over the animal's eye, but a little fatigue made us drop down just a little bit, and then the shutter was fired. So one option is to change the location of that focus point. It's easy on most cameras and designed to be done with the camera to our eye. We just have to become acquainted with those settings, but it's quite easy to move any red square focusing point to the left or the right. So we can position it on the left here, position that over the animal's face and eye. Now we don't have to move the camera very much at all, and we have all of the animal in the shot. The alternative is we have to focus on the eye of the animal, hold the shutter button halfway down, then recompose the shot while holding that shutter button halfway down. But I guess that's what the author was trying to do here. Perhaps fatigue set in, perhaps it was mixed with a little bit of concentration on trying to get that critical sharpness on the face and the eye, but once again, back button focus may have helped here too. Now the reason I've raised this issue is that it's far more common than we all care to admit. And even an experienced photographer can fall foul of this sometimes. Now I can say that with some confidence too, seeing as I've fallen myself more than once. If your viewfinder can display the rule of thirds grid, and many of them can, I'd turn it on and leave it on, because if nothing else, it's a great reminder. The focus and sharpness on this image was great. The exposure, a little to the right, was also just about perfect for great processing. So maybe it's worth thinking just for a moment. We bought the kit, travelled to the zoo, wildlife park, or somewhere outdoors. We managed to capture a great sharp shot just where it needs to be sharp, with the best exposure for processing. But if I'm being brutal just for a moment, the author has lost most of that with that one simple error. Maybe they was concentrating so much on the technicalities, as I suggested at the start of this video, that the creative part got away from them. Of course, all this is very easy to see and point out with the benefit of hindsight. But if a little heads up and a 10-minute video helps, then all's well. Don't forget, if you're viewing on YouTube, please consider subscribing to my channel. Hit the notification bell and you'll be informed whenever I put up a new video. I'll see you next time.